And at this point, I'd like to bring up my friend Juan to talk about Adept Integrator. Integrator is something we launched last year, so it's a new product for us. And John's going to tell you all about it. We've got some good successes, and he's here to answer your questions. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. I was going to say good morning for some of those which are a little bit lost in the day. Sometimes I'm like that. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through Adept Integrator. And it's a really sexy subject. It's plumbing. So I'm going to really try and make it sound a bit better than what it really is, because plumbing is just plumbing. But nonetheless, some of you may have seen some of these slides before. And what we've done is we've incorporated some of the slides from last year just to bring back and re-jog your memory of what the tool is and how it works. And then what we've done is we've stood up a demo, which I've recorded there for you guys as well, which we can walk through. So that's me. If you can't see me, there's a nice little picture of me when I was skinny and younger. But essentially, where I come from, if you just want to know my background, originally trained as a lawyer, but got a scholarship through IBM and didn't like the legal field, so I went to IBM and then became a software architect, and so learned the intricacies of integration and middleware and all those good things with IBM, and never left the industry since then. So that's me, and just a little bit of fun stuff about me. I just love riding bicycles, so you'll hear me talk about bicycles quite a lot. Thanks, God. You make me blush now, hey? So what is Integrator? Integrator is it's an out-of-the-box platform which helps you integrate and connect ERPs and systems within your organization. Okay? So it really helps companies orchestrate data and move data from one application to another. Okay? That's really your pay line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a couple of integration scenarios for you guys today. And I'm going to take it at a very high level, and I'm going to dive down into how complex and how detailed it can be. So work with me as I go through this today. And one of the integration scenarios which I've got up on the board here is a very simple integration, which we would be if we were to integrate Adept to your PLM systems. And one of the things which we've done for some of our clients is, by integrating into the PLM system, we've been able to synchronize units of measure, item classifications from Adept into a PLM system such as Propel, or vice versa, bringing the unit of measure back from the PLM into Adept. Taking that one step further, we're able to actually update bill of materials, and when it comes down to engineering change requests, we were able to actually start synchronizing engineering change requests between the two systems. One of the key things which we were doing in this instance is just migrating data and then moving a HTML link of the document from Adept into the PLM system, so that the user would be able to click on that link and see the latest version of that document. Taking that one step further, if you've got an enterprise asset management solution or an ERP, and you need to get that integrated into Adept, what we've done in this instance is take your asset numbers, which may be in your EAM system, such as Maximo or SAP or whatever, synchronize that through to Adept, update the data card, and at the same time, move the HTML link from Adept into your EAM system, thereby giving your users the opportunity, if they're at in Maximo, for example, they would be able to click on the link and see the latest version of let's say, a user manual or a drawing. And once again, as that goes into the ERP or the EAM system, it then becomes available for that system to be able to be linked to other modules. Let's say, for example, work order management systems or their asset system. And so those objects now become tightly integrated within those systems. And all we've really done here is just move data. We haven't really moved the document. In some instances, what we've done as well is users like uploading documents into a Maximo or something, or an ERP, and that can't be the central repository for all documents. So we need to get those documents out of the EAM system into Adept and managed in Adept. And we're busy with a project with Lucite in that vein right now. And some of the challenges which we're experiencing there is because your EAM system is not a document management system, you're taking everything across. And taking everything across into Adept takes quite a lot of user administration to actually compartmentalize and move that document to the right place. So in that instance, once you've got that connection tied up between the two systems, one has other opportunities to start looking at other triggers from where those documents come. Like, for example, if it comes from an asset management solution, we can take some of the data from those screens and move it into the correct library. And so your opportunities to grow deeper into the integration becomes available to you. A third, more complicated kind of scenario, and as you can see, we're getting from point-to-point kind of integration to bringing a third application into the orchestration, where we would bring a GIS solution into place. And in this instance, what we can do is, let's say, for example, you've got your asset numbers coming from Maximo or an SAP scenario. You need to get that into Adept. And then, of course, you need to synchronize your link back to your EAM system so that they can get the latest version. But you need more information. You need to be able to link that information or that asset to a drawing, as well as bring your latitude and longitude and information together. And then at that point, be able to drive down into more geographic information. So what we try to do over here with these solutions is, because we're moving data, we want to achieve a philosophy that a user can come in from either your GIS solution and view the documents relevant to that location, or if they're in Adept, they can view the same kind of document, or if they're in the ERP or Maximo, see the same document. In other words, what we're trying to do is you input data once at source, and you find data from where the user comes to look for the data. If the user's used to seeing data in a certain application, then you want to be able to present that information in that fashion to the user. And that's really the fundamental principles of orchestrating data. So what should you be looking for when you're considering integration? I'm going to go through these individually, and usually I just pump these all up and I just talk ad lib to it. But today what I'm going to do is just spend a little bit more time as to what one should be looking for, because integration is a really deep subject. Integration can be between people. It could be between applications, as we're talking about today. But one of the key things when we're talking to integration in our world is you want an application or a platform which is going to be code-free. Okay, and why do we want a code-free application to do this? Because if we were to draw an integration between System A and System B and write line-based code, and Joe does that for you, you're beholden onto Joe for the rest of your life. Okay? And that's a hard connection between these two applications. If you have a code-free environment, what actually enables you to do is to manipulate that code or that integration, that orchestration, quite readily and quite easily. And if one application were to upgrade, you're not breaking any integrations in that process. So code-free is really key. Having the ability to schedule data is also an important point. And when I talk about scheduling data, I also talk about triggers in the same vein. What is a trigger? What is a schedule? In most instances, we would, if I take our first example, we're going to schedule a synchronization of data from, let's say, Maximo into Adept every night. That's a schedule. But sometimes what you want to do is you want to set a trigger. In this instance, what you might want to do is if you have a geospatial solution in place, let's say like ArcGIS or Esri, and a document is updated, you want a trigger to kick off that this needs to make a call to Esri and say, hey, this is my site, this is my location, give me the latitude and longitude information. So you want a back-end system trigger to update data. And those are triggers which I'm talking about. And when you look at integration, schedules and triggers become really important because they allow you to manage things and manage orchestrations in the background, but at the same time, utilizing these tools, it gives you the ability to build some error reporting and handle exceptions. Monitoring of the platform or monitoring of your integrations is really important. Now, if I have to take my first example where I'm doing integration point to point and in a traditional sense where we've got an application hard tied to another application, and then we've got another application which we bring in, and then all of a sudden we've got 6 applications which we're now tying together manually, monitoring this world becomes really, really, really difficult, okay? And you've got IT staff looking over this and understanding why it happens, and then a document doesn't synchronize or data doesn't synchronize, and you've got guys running around chasing, the monitoring and updating the orchestration. What you really want here is you want a system which has a powerful monitor which will tell you that the following errors have occurred over this whole orchestration. And you can imagine, as you get more and more deep in your orchestrations, so that monitoring ability to actually trigger updates and errors for you becomes really important. Connectivity. Connectivity is essential because if you look at how many applications there are out there in the ecosystem around the globe today, it's quite mind-boggling to say the least. But we all have in our organization some standard applications, and most of these applications are, I can name them for you, from industry solution vendors like SAP, Oracle, IBM, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics. These are all familiar, and you've all got some version of these applications running around in your organization or running in your organization. But what's really important here is, over 100+ pre-built components to make connections. You can't cater for everything. You can't have a connector for everything, but you can have a component which will allow you to connect to almost anything. And I'm going to spend a little bit more on that in a couple more slides. But suffice to say, what you should be really looking for is an open platform that will allow you to integrate easily with whatever you've got in your organization. For the IT folk, and when we get into military and we get into security and lockdown environments, end-to-end security becomes really important. Okay, although we're not holding data in staging tables, and the data in this world is in transit, in other words, it triggers and it moves across and it goes into another application, that's great and very difficult to actually intercept, but still you need to make sure that that data, when it moves, is encrypted. And encryption is really important in this world, let alone when we lock it all up, you want to make sure that if anybody does get into it, and if it weren't encrypted, it would be very difficult for them to unpack, because data is important. The last point here is what I call in-memory data gridding. Okay. Now, we spoke about a slide, or there was a talk yesterday about the Internet of Things, and over 20 billion IoT devices out there and big data and all this data flying at us every single day. I love the comment of Blockbuster from our keynote speaker. They had all the data, but they did nothing with that data. And most of us are sitting with so much data and more data is flying at us every single day. And what's the ability of our systems to be able to catch that data and manage that data? Now, in-memory data grid technology is a technology which has come out pretty recently. And really what it does is it utilizes the memory within the server environment. So for example, if I had to turn around and say every one of us has got a laptop on the table and we're all working, what you want to be able to do with in-memory data grid architecture is take let's say a gig of RAM from every single laptop which is in the room, pull that together into a virtual RAM, and have that processing power. That's the ability to actually take everything and virtualize it on the fly, use it to process your data, and let it go when you don't need it. So the ability to manage big data is a key feature. And you will see more and more of this coming through as we progress with more data flying at us. So the benefits of Adept Integrator and why we launched the product last year and some of the opportunities for you guys is that we've got connectors to the major industry solution vendors. JD Edwards, SAP, Microsoft, SharePoint. These are all standard pre-built connectors. And what's great about it is we don't have to be the expert. We do not have to be the SAP expert or the Maximo expert, the SharePoint expert. Our connector will connect up with those systems, and all we've got to worry about is connecting that up to Adept. And once we've established that connection, we're worrying now about the business process. Under what conditions should that data move? How does that data move? How is that data validated before it goes into a system? We want to focus on the business process, not the deep level IT, okay, and get bogged down in that IT. Bidirectional transactioning. Now, this is it goes without question. I mean, of course, we can do both up and down transaction, but let's state the obvious. When we suck data out of a system, let's say I'm sucking data out of Maximo or SAP and I'm putting it into a data card, there's very little witches to that. I can connect to a database, I can connect to a web service, I can do pretty much anything because I'm just consuming data. But when I'm consuming data, processing that data and sending it back, that becomes a little bit more tricky because we've got to satisfy certain business rules on that other application side. And in those circumstances, one needs to be cautious. But what's great about Integrator is that we can build those business rules right in the center and make sure that that data goes across to the target application under the conditions that it needs to be there or satisfy certain business rules. Reducing mistakes. I put out a statement a little earlier where we want to input data once at source. By inputting data once at source, let's say we were sitting in a Maximo or we're sitting in Adept, and have that data transfer across. You're not sending a person or having 2 or 3 individuals updating the same information in 3 different applications, which obviously leads to mistakes. It's certainly not efficient. So having that ability to actually update once and having the system handle the back end for you makes a lot more sense to you from a point of view of managing your data and orchestrating data. Of course, reducing operational costs. This is a really key point for us, a uniformed, singular integration view of all your interfaces. Now, I spoke about the analogy, and again, I'm going to come back to it, where we do this hard point-to-point kind of integration. I look at that as a bowl of spaghetti. If we had to think about it, by the time we've integrated 6 or 7 different applications, we've got a real big bowl of spaghetti in the middle. And in order to maintain and monitor and manage that, we have to get into the detail. And the best way you do that is to trace the line. You know, take this piece of spaghetti out and try and untangle it, and then, okay, that's where it's broken kind of thing. What Integrator does is once we've got all our integrations, we put all our integrations into the middle of the engine, we have a global view of everything. We understand how this business process interacts with the next business process and which calls that one. So it makes problem solving for us a lot easier and a lot quicker. Consolidating data, I've heard a lot about reporting. I've heard a lot about taking data out of different systems and getting that up into some sort of business intelligence tool or a data warehouse. Well, that's really easy to do, because if you think about it, if I'm orchestrating data between source system and target system, A and B, what's the difference between taking that data out of those systems, transforming it, and putting it into a data warehouse so that it could be reported on? Same difference, okay? That opportunity exists for us as well. So the take-home point for you is that to do integration and integrate with your corporate systems could be done in a fraction of the time. Traditionally, what normally takes 6, 7, 8 months to do integrations, point to point with a whole bunch of experts, now you do with a fraction of the staff, literally one person and what I would call a consultant from each side who understand the business rules. And literally, you can get those applications to truly talk to one another in a seamless manner. So for those who want pictures and understand how the platform works, we just put the Adept application layer at the top. Integrator can run as a platform across the whole application stack, connecting to all your applications. So essentially, if we can call it that, we can call it the glue between applications. Now, I spoke about the 100 pre-built components for you to use and the industry solution vendors. Let me dig a little bit into this, because it's really important for us to understand. How do we connect between 2 or 3 applications? And let's say one of those applications we do not have a pre-built connector for. How do we bring this into orchestration? And this slide really talks to that for us. If you have a look on the left-hand side here, and this, what's that? That's purple, magenta. Okay, that's all your connectors. Those are your pre-built connectors, which we've got out in the marketplace. Okay, there's Oracle, there's SAP, there's Adept. There's pretty much most of the industry solution vendors out there, and that's really great. Connecting up and establishing those connections is easy for us. But now let's say we want to connect to an application which doesn't exist really in the world, but really does have some sort of web service core which we need to make a connection to. Now, I don't know if you know much about web services, and I might get a little technical now, but bear with me. I'm not going to go too deep for you guys, but suffice to say, just to give you an example, certain web services will only give you a scope of, let's say, sales order processing or update an asset, but it's a very narrow scope. And in most instances, web services don't cater for the business process which you're trying to map out. So what we can do is we can utilize a web service in some instances, connect to the database, build the business process in the middle, connect up to, let's say, Oracle, and through a blended approach, bring that integration and that orchestration together. So it gives us that ability to connect and bring all the different components and blend our connectivity at any one point in time. The Internet of Things, we spoke about that. It's really a huge opportunity, and this is really where we see a lot of big data coming from. And now you can understand, because we've got this Internet of the IoT connector, which leverages on what we call MQTT, it now gives us the ability, if we're looking at PLM, to connect to the greater world. Okay? If you've got devices out there and sending error messages home, you want to be able to provide an opportunity to grab that data from the industry or from the field and put that into a rules-based engine and process that into your PLM system for predictive maintenance or however you want to run that. But certainly that opportunity exists for us over there. And then, of course, file management is a key function which we use, especially if we look at it in the sense of your workspace. We can create a workspace where we could be monitoring a file location and bringing documents into Adept. So taking on a little bit more of a deeper dive, I'm sure you've heard of acronyms such as Enterprise or ESB, ETL, and BPM. So let me talk to you a little bit about what each one of these are. ESB is what we call Enterprise Service Bus. It really gives you the ability to do those real-time triggers. Gives us the ability to poll systems, to schedule certain actions. ETL is extract, transform the data, and put it into something else. Okay? So we're able to take data. Let's say, for example, I can take a date format, which is European format. I can transform it on the fly and put it into Adept on the correct format. I could even do something like this, where I extract data. Let's say it's a currency in British pounds. Call the internet, see the latest exchange rate, transform that data, and put it back into a system. That's what I call about. That's what I talk about when I talk about transforming data. And then business process modeling is really where we focus as well. So of the first two, we do all of those, but the business process modeling is really the key point, because the business process is where we start. Okay. And I'll get to that in the next few slides. In terms of the web-based monitor, just wanted to give you a bit of a view. You can imagine having all these different integrations, orchestrations. What you really want to be able to do is get onto a web-based monitor and see everything at a glance. And this is just some slides of the web-based monitor which we have in place. So how do we do integrations? What's the first thing we do? And I spoke about this business process modeling. The first thing we would do is understand the business process, map out the business process. So those of you, of our clients which have been through this process with us, that's where we spend a huge amount of time. Understanding the business process. What does your current business process look like? What does it need to change to? What's the requirements of each of these applications? And how do we satisfy the business rules? And then so we build that business process. This is a business process which we developed for a client up in Canada. And I've got a demo of this process. And essentially what this process is it's a capital request system for a mining house. And essentially what they've got is they've got Sharepoint out there, and they need to update documents or apply for capital, update all their documents, environmental studies and the like. It drops down into Adept, and then they need to manage the workflow and the delegation of authority, the approval of finance in that whole process, and in that instance, update their ERP. So we start there, and this is essentially what we did for a client. And then under each one of these is a little deeper business process which we map. From that business process, what we do is now we develop. Okay, and I said to you that there is no code. Okay, you're actually seeing the screens of how we actually do our integration. If you're familiar with Visual Studio, it has a Visual Studio UI. But essentially, what we do here is we build that business process in the middle. Okay, and we map that out. On the right-hand side, over here, by the Solution Explorer, is where we link different business processes to one another. So we can call a business process and another business process and another business process and bring that whole process together and orchestrate data. At the top here is where we set our triggers and our schedules. And then on the left-hand side, down the left there, are all the connectors, which we got. So you can see I don't need to be a SAP expert. I can literally drag my SAP connector from here onto the main pane and then build the business process. Okay? Now, I've built the business logic. Okay? But what about the data? The devil lies in the detail. So how do we map the fields? You know, because now we've got to make sure that our data card, on the one hand, needs to update, let's say, our EAM system. And essentially what we do when we do that is we expose a data mapper view where we visually represent all the fields in each one of those applications. That's what the connector does. As we connect up with those systems, it produces all those fields which are available for us to play with and work with. Okay? And literally what we do is we draw lines between these applications. And under certain circumstances, under the business process, as we go through the business process, if this were a yes or no or a logical test, At this point, then update that field. If I had another map over here, at that point, update a different field, kind of thing. So I can get into detail, but I didn't have to write any code. And that's really important. And I can have a view of everything running from there. If I were to change data and transform data, as you can see on the top here, we've got this fx, this function key, where we can transform data in certain circumstances. So I'm doing it in transit. I'm not staging any data and then moving it, which creates a whole lot of security issues. I'm literally taking the data out of the source, and whilst it's in transit, I'm transforming that data, and then I'm putting it into the target system. And that's about as deep as I'm going to get with you guys in terms of technicality. So whoever I lost, come back, because I'm going to show you a little demo now. I'm going to show you a scenario, and the client which I spoke to you about a minute ago, that business process which I put out. This is the scenario which we've put together. So let me just run through what you're going to see in the demo, and then I'm going to walk through the demo from the client side. What they had is they had Sharepoint. And it was a request for capital. They needed to open up an opportunity. They would fill out a form in Sharepoint. From filling out that form, it would then go through to Adept Integrator, update their cost management system, update their Oracle system. That request for capital would then be pre-populated and pre-populate documents. And then that submit drops down into Adept. At that point, the form and all the documents associated with that application drops into Adept. Adept then takes over. The whole workflow functionality of Adept sets in motion. Emails get triggered and the like, and there's an approval or a rejection of that body of documents. From there, if it's approved, it updates their cost system, updates their ERPs, and the method of moving all this data around and all the triggers we're using is email. So essentially, what we've got, if you remember, our very first scenario was a point-to-point kind of scenario. Then we got a little bit more complicated, and now what I'm showing you here is a live scenario for a client where we've brought in 6 or 7 different applications and been a lot more detailed in terms of that integration. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually show you what we did is we stood up a demo. It's recorded because I didn't want to do anything live. And I'm going to walk you through what we saw or what we did for this client. Now, obviously, I've taken branding out and I've watered it down, so no sensitive information happening. But this is the Sharepoint screen, and what we've done is we've just pulled it up very simply. The AFE number is on the top. They click on, let's create an opportunity. And at this point, this is the Sharepoint page where they start filling out all their details for the opportunity. This is an application for funding. The site, this is really important in the instances. Each one of those sites represents a library, and depending on what site, depends on what library the document goes into, what corporate, what department it is. Sorry, I can't speed this up, and I kept it quite slow because I wasn't too sure how fast or how slow I was going to talk today. We give it a project title, the integration program, give ourselves a project sponsor and a project manager. And we set our dates for our project, our start and end dates. Once we save this opportunity, you will see we get issued a number. So as we save the number, you'll see on the top right corner, I'm going to zoom in on it in a minute, we get an opportunity number. That opportunity number is essentially the project number or the document number which comes through to Adept. So I want you to remember that number. It's AFE 2018, I can't see it from the screen yet, number 10. Okay, what we've clicked on now is we've gone to the document tab, and this is where we load all our artifacts, every single document which is relevant to this opportunity. Okay, might be environmental studies, applications, and the like. At this point, we've hit submit. An email is triggered, sent out. Now, you're all familiar with emails. The email comes through to the user or the project sponsor. with the number. And at this point, he can approve or reject. Now, what's different here is that the approve or reject approves in all systems, not just Adept. Okay? And what we're going to show you is we're going to show you a scenario of it working just in Adept. As we go into Adept now, it drops into our one and only library, which we've stood up there. And you'll see we've got a parent and a child document. We've created that relationship, so every single one of the documents which are attached are children of the parent, and we've got that record standing up there. So we're just zooming in here just to show you that we've got the AFE 2018 number 10, and then just underneath it, we've got the AFE number 10 as its child coming through there. On the bottom left, you'll see the relationship, which has been created as well. And you can have as many relationships as you want. So now you can see what we've done is we've actually, without going into Adept, from SharePoint, we've had the opportunity to fill out the data card, which I'm going to show now. I think I've just stolen my thunder, and put it into Adept. At the same time, whilst we've checked that in, we've initiated a workflow as well. And that's where the whole workflow process now kicks off. So just going into the data card, we're going to the data card. We've replicated the data card to the SharePoint page. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to bring up a side-by-side view of the data card versus the SharePoint page and just show you that essentially the update of that data is no longer responsible. The data is input once at source. And that's the adage and the philosophy which we're working at here. So just going through this is going to take us a wee while, but I mean, our number sits at the top. Our AFE number comes in over there. Okay, our site is replicated between the two. Our project manager, Tony Stark. I don't know if you know Tony Stark. Our project title, and then, of course, our project manager, who's Steve Rogers. OK, so that replication of that data happens seamlessly between the two systems and really becomes a huge opportunity for us. What we've done as well, and I'm going to steal a little bit of my thunder, I speak a little ahead of myself, is we've done that both for the parent and the child and all of its children. So you don't have to worry about updating that data. That data is synchronized all the way through the system. The document, as you can see, we've got our text file there, which we updated, and there's our text file at the bottom end there as well. And this just shows you the data card of our child record at the same time. So the next step is the approval process. Okay? I've got to slow down my speaking a little bit. And we will then go into the bottom part here, just a second. I counted myself out. So, okay, come on. Catch up, Sean. Obviously had a lot more to say earlier. But nonetheless, what we're going to see over here now is we're going to see an email being kicked off. And what I'm showing you at this point is where I sit in the process. I'm sitting, demo integrator has updated it. It's sitting at gatekeeper approval, and it's waiting for the gatekeeper to approve the record. Okay? And the same applies for both parent and child. We're going to shoot off to email now. And I know you can approve this either from Adept, but what we want to show you here is we're going to approve this from email. So we're going to stand outside. We're a C-level user in our organization. And invariably, I don't know how many of your CEOs and executives spend that much time in Adept, but nonetheless, this client, their CEOs and their C-level suite, we're not going to get into Adept at all. So we needed to provide a way in which they could approve and view the document. So in this instance, we're not showing this now, but very simply, we send them an email, and what we can do and what we have done is we send the HTML link as well. So the C-level user can actually click on the link and open up their document and see the document, see all the records, and then from there, approve it. What I've done here is I've just replied, approve. And what happens here is the approve gets sent back. Integrator picks that up and then runs that approval through into Adept and approves to the next phase. So you can see we just did the update there, and we're now at the next level. So there's our approval, and now we're sitting at technical review. The same would apply for a reject, okay? And I'm just going to show that to you in the next step, where the email is just rejected, and what we do is we go back one step. Okay? I can't speed it up because I'm caught in my... No, I know. Yeah. So, okay. Just hanging fire. I'm not a very good DJ, so I don't fulfill the silence very well. Okay, and then at this point here, we just do our reject, and then we'll just update that.
So is the integrator actually pulling out the text from your email
Yeah.
and executing a command?
Yeah, so it searches the email and pulls it out from there. And then it will just update it from there. So we can look for different strings, different approved, different triggers, the works.
More than reject, I'd reject this.
If you put a reject in a comment, we can take that comment as well. So we can take the reject command, the comment, and pull that comment into a notes area within the data card or wherever you need as well. So definitely the comments can come through as well. And we do that as well in that instance. So what we've done here is once we're sitting in certain areas within our workflows, we can update that workflow. We can say, hey, it's sitting with CEO, it's sitting with technical review and the like. So we can synchronize that data and make sure that it's synchronized all the way through. So forgive the delay in a couple of points, but that's really a demo of Integrator working. And you can see, I mean, there's nothing really sexy about it because it's just normal applications, what the user would expect to see from the front-end application, and everything's happening in the background, much like it's magic at the end of the day. So here's some scenarios. I know this is a really busy slide, but I'm just going to put it out there, and we've touched on it. But you know, ERP integration is really a scenario which we've seen a lot of. Work order integration between two different systems. We've done GIS integration. We've done integration between SAP and cost systems where we do certifications of approvals. The email notification is pretty much what you've just seen now working. The web form integration is what you've just seen now. And then you know, scheduling into project systems as well. So I'm going to hand over to Scott here, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing my strange accent, and I'm just going to have Scott just run through some of the licensing for us.
Accent, don't we? All right, so just a couple quick slides, yeah.
Thank you.
And John will stay up for questions as well. So just quickly to go over the components of Integrator. So there's a platform. That's foundational. You've got to have the platform if you're going to use Integrator. That'll be either 4 threads or 8 threads. And John, I'll ask you to chat a little bit about threads in a moment. And then there's connectors. Okay, so you've got the platform. If there's a business system that you want to connect, either with Adept or to another business system, doesn't even have to be to Adept. You can use Integrator for that. Then you would need that Tier 1 connector if we have one. Now, if the business system you have, we don't have a Tier 1 connector. Tier 1 simply means we've done a lot of work with it. It's a pretty robust connection that we've got built. Then there may be a Tier 2 connector for that application. And if we don't have that, then we get into a custom connector. So a custom connector basically is we're using the Studio product, the Integrator Studio product, which is what is used to build all these Tier 1 or Tier 2 connectors, and we build a connector for you. We might have some tools for that to build that connector already. We might have done a couple of them, but they're not at the level of a Tier 1 or a Tier 2. So the bottom line is we can integrate just about anything in some of these different methods. And then you would need maintenance, and Studio is optional. Studio is if you want to build and maintain your own business flows, you would need Studio. And what else do we have here? So the platform's required, 4 or 8 thread. 1 platform is sufficient for most situations. You're probably not going to need more than that. And 4 threads is generally sufficient as well. It's more expensive for additional threads. And John, if you want to talk a little bit, just briefly, about understanding the concept of threads.
Yeah, can you build that all out? Yeah. So how a thread works, because it's a platform and it's not user-based, the way it works is that if I had to picture out one business process, a business process could take up a thread, okay? And when we've got 4 threads, we could have 4 business processes running concurrently before the next one kicks off. Okay, so now let's give you a view of how much data that can be. If I've got 4 business processes and you're going, well, geez, I've got about 10 business processes. Your first business process could run in a sub-second, okay? So you could have 4 business processes running in a sub-second. Let's just take it for a second. And when it's finished running in that second, it kicks off again. And you can then extrapolate that over a 24-hour clock. There's a lot of processing which can happen in the background. That's the whole value of us not going the traditional licensing method where we look at how many cores you've got in your server or how many users you've got. We want to be able to process big data, okay? And no matter how big that business process is, we don't care. It's just a thread, okay? And we don't mind how much data is coming at us. It's a single thread. So usually in our integrations, which we've gone into, 4 threads is way more than enough for the scenario. And just to give you a view, when we did a rollout for Microsoft, which was a global rollout, we were only expecting to put 8 threads in. For this scenario, which I showed you now, it's a global organization. They've got guys working on it 24/7 around the globe. They're only running on 4 threads. So there's a lot of processing which you can do in those 4 threads.
This is the largest gold mining company in the world that we're talking about. So then we'll just talk a little bit about pricing. You may be interested, well, what does this thing cost? How do we buy it? Essentially, I mentioned the integrator platform is essential. That's about $13,000. You would need a connector. If it's a Tier 1 connector, that's $10,000. So that's kind of your base price here if it's a Tier 1 connector. If it's a Tier 2 connector, it's a little less. I think it's about $3,000 less for Tier 2 connectors. We're just trying to give you the kind of the high level of what does this thing cost? What might it cost? You know, some examples have several connectors. We need multiple systems connected up. And then, you know, but you'll work with your account manager if this is something you're interested in. And then there's services that go with that, and that could be somewhere in the range of about $24K to configure the Tier 1 or Tier 2 connector for your needs, okay? If it's a custom connector, let's say it's a homegrown system that you use or some system that we don't have a Tier 1 or a Tier 2, the costs really come out to be pretty much the same. Whether it's Tier 1, Tier 2 is a little less expensive. Custom connectors, you'd think they'd be a whole lot more expensive if I've got to build this thing more from scratch. It's really not, because you're not paying for the Tier 1 connector. You're paying for the services to build your connector. So it works out in the ballpark of 50 to 60K typically to connect a system to Adept. And then less, obviously, if you add more and more systems, the price does increase, but not at the same scale. Questions for Jean or myself? We've got lots of questions. We're running a little over, and we'll take 3 or 4. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Any use cases for using Adept Integrator with CAFM tools, IWMS tools in the facilities space?
Yes, we have. In some instances, what we've done is connected it up to access control systems in some instances. Sometimes down at the shop floor. We've gone down to the shop floor as well. But it's very different data and different business processes at that. And the device is more of an I/O kind of device at that point. If you're looking at control or quantum or weightometers and that, am I talking?
Yeah, it's really in the realm of facility, data systems, building systems. You mentioned
Okay.
IoT,
Yeah.
sensors,
Okay.
occupancy sensors.
Exactly.
The whole gamut.
So yeah, and that's why I jumped down into that, because it's really gauged through IoT, PLC type controllers and that. And yes, so we have connected up with those.
But yet it'll be tier 2, I presume, or
Yeah.
web services type design.
Well, we actually use IoT more because the standard's moving more toward IoT in those scenarios. But most of those legacy solutions are web service based. What we have done with some of those applications is connect direct to the database because the volume of data is huge, okay, and it's much better looking at the database. So I'm hoping that as those facilities systems grow and upgrade, that IoT becomes more of a standard, and then it's a much easier connection for us.
The industry's going for sure. So
Yes.
the system that that I have in mind for Merck is one that has its own set of APIs.
Yeah.
So I assume if it then had an integration
Yeah.
capability that, Adept Integrator could plug right in.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
So,
one real quick follow-up. What about BI tools and analytics tools?
Yeah.
Like Tableau?
Yes.
Have you done integrations there?
yes, we have done integrations. The great thing about Tableau is, and I always say, Tableau is a wonderful tool. You can take that, I often take the data out of source system, transform it and put it into a mini data warehouse, which I then put Tableau on top of because it's just easier to create your visualizations.
We have now.
Yeah. But there's nothing stopping you from actually putting a web service into Tableau and having that web service call direct. Okay, if you know what data you're looking for. And then it's a direct link. I mean, then it's like instantaneous.
To be managed, as you said before, as
Correct.
upgrades and things take place. But you want to take advantage of the APIs, I think is
Correct.
your message.
It's exactly the message. So, I mean, the web service functionality becomes really, really key there. And that's the trigger. That's the real-time trigger we're talking about. You're sitting in a war room. You click on the drill down. You want to get into the data as deep as possible. You don't want to store that in a data warehouse. It's sitting in the operational system, and that's where you make those web service calls.
Transfers, and you don't have any work rules around when the transfer went up.
Correct.
All right.
And that's where that comes from.
So, guys, we're 25 minutes over I know we got a lot of people that want to break, so I'm going to take just 2 more questions, but Juan is here, and you'll be able to talk to him on the break, so go ahead.
First of all, thank you for such a very detailed presentation. 2 parts. On the email notification, do you have any logic? For instance, if an approval is out of town, do you have logic to have the email be resent to that person?
Yes, we do. And we can build that into a web form, so to say. So what you can do is you can build a little admin screen saying, OK, I'm out of town. Best is actually to connect it into your HR system at that point, where your HR system says, hey, I've approved PTO for this person, and he's actually on PTO. So his delegate is Todd or Scott, and then the system will pick it up and then forward that out. So yes, definitely.
Excellent, thank you. The second part is for the SharePoint site, in this example, did you use an on-site hosted
Both.
SharePoint or Microsoft's cloud?
This site we used cloud. We started it off on-prem, and then the client wanted to move everything to the cloud because Integrator's running in the cloud here for them. So we moved to the cloud. It doesn't really make a difference to us. We can actually connect direct to the cloud or to on-prem. The great thing about it is that with the SharePoint connector, it's ADFS enabled, so we authenticate as if we're on the domain, and everything's controlled from that point of view. So available.
Thank you.
Was that it, or was there one more? We're good? All right. Yeah, go ahead.
The file was sent with that email, correct?
Yes. So we don't send the file. We send a link.
A link back.
Yes.
Back into the system.
So we'll send.
Circumventing the need for the Adept license if you're sending the file with the email.
Yeah. No. We leave the file where it is.
So we don't want to distribute uncontrolled files through email, and then you lose control of stuff.
So in that scenario, we can send an HTML version or the ALS link. And if you're a desktop user, you click on the ALS link and you'll go direct into the desktop.
All right, so we are going to take a 20-minute break. I do want to give you guys a break. We've been in here a while. We'll come back in for the Adept roadmap and then just the announcement of Adept Experience next year.